cell phone, so I'm calling the Carroll County Board of Zoning Appeals July 25th, 2023 meeting to order. And first order on the agenda is introduction of members.
John Downey, Commissioner. County Commissioner.
Lee Schultz, Burlington.
Doug Walker, represents schools.
Everett Snowberger, Town of Camden.
Cameron Yates, Area Plan Director.
Cindy Harmon, legal counsel.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the June 27th, 2023 meeting. And I take it everyone has a copy of the minutes. And are there any additions and corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'm going to accept the minutes.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is variance 2023-5 Wagner. So we have a request for a variance, demolition and reconstruction of property caused by water intrusion and mold issues. And do we have someone here this evening that would like to address us and tell us what you're doing? Please state your name and
My name is Craig Sorensen. I'm the owner of Brookhaven Homes. I'm the petitioner, and I am representing the property owner, which is Dr. John and Sherry Wagner. Can I go ahead and just,
just tell us what you plan on doing.
All right, so as you've already mentioned, we have a piece of property on the lake located at 8346 Talcott Drive, and we have an issue with mold and water damage of the structure. The main home was built in 1976. I'm sorry, the main home was built in 1965, and the detached garage was built in 1976. We'd like to demolish the garage and rebuild it in the same footprint, and demolish the main property for the house and build new. I'm requesting today a variance from the Carroll County flood ordinance that requires that the garages be raised to FPG, which is the flood protection guaranteed elevation. We're asking this because, as you can see in this picture, a part of the ordinance is requirement that if I were to raise the garage, and if you, Cameron, if you go back to the elevation image of the house. Yeah, and on the dot, or on the packet, there was a rendering of the home.
Bear with us, our internet at the county has been less than.
When he pulls that up, so the main living structure will have an attached garage, and as requirement, I mean, we have to build a garage on a slab, and so both the attached garage and the detached garage would need to be raised 2 feet, so meet the FPG, a little bit more than 2 feet. And part of the ordinance is that for any cubic foot or cubic yard of dirt that I bring on site, I have to remove. So we're looking at 400 to 600 cubic yards of fill to be able to raise the apron in front of the house and the driveway and the under the slabs for the garages. And I would have to remove that same dirt from somewhere on the lot, and that becomes a burden that we don't think is possible given the level of the lot compared to the lake and the ability to move that much soil. We've also, I want to also include that we would raise the main living space to FPG. We're not asking for a variance for that. So the main living space would be above FPG or at FPG, and all the equipment associated with the living space, mechanical, electrical, as such, would be raised as well. So this would only be for storage and vehicles. I want to also include that in researching this, I came across the NFIP Technical Bulletin number 7, which was dated May 2022. It has a section 5.1.2, which states that attached garages without a story above, which would be, in this case, we don't have a story above our attached garage, is allowed to be at or below BFE, assuming that we include flood openings and use flood damage resistant materials, and the utility equipment must be elevated. So according to the NFIP technical bulletin, the attached garage is allowed to be at or below BFE, and we're requesting at BFE. The detached garage is a little bit different. The detached garage, according to that same technical bulletin, section 5.1.3, is allowed to be at B or below BFE if we wet-proof it, but it is limited to a certain size requirement. So I would have to request a variance to increase the size requirement in that technical bulletin, which on the next page on 5. And I have this bulletin if you go, so if you want to review it. On 5.2.2, the technical bulletin specifically allows communities to allow structures larger than the minimum or the maximum required square footage. If I can prove that we have due to topographical or physical condition that we must overcome. And in this case, I mentioned before, is the removal and reconstitution of soils in the property and the lack of the inability to do that. And that's my case to the board for the variance.
Okay. Any questions?
The house is gonna be at the floodplain.
The house, the living space, living quarters will all be at FPG, which is required by the ordinance. It's just the garages.
So, the garage, which is a one-story unit, just told me that, is at or below floodplain?
It is currently below, we would raise it to floodplain, BFE.
Okay, so
That's what
in,
they're requesting the variance from, from flood protection grade to base flood elevation.
so, is that a variation we're talking about on the garage? Main garage?
So it's both garages, the attached and the detached. So the home is, the dwelling itself, there will be both the flood protection grade. They're asking that the attached garage meet the minimum for FEMA, which is base flood. Our ordinance states that it's 2 feet above, which is what the variance is requesting.
Is the garage attached or unattached?
It's not built, they're proposing, it's new construction after the tear down.
I understand, but
There'll
the
be,
new one is
there'll be
attached.
two.
The new garage is attached to the dwelling or not?
There'll be one attached,
Yes, there'll be one attached.
One car attached or a garage for 2 cars?
A garage for 2 bays.
Okay. And then this third structure, what is its purpose? What's it being?
It's a detached storage unit garage with another 2 bays. Yeah, so this, if I may, this would be the attached garage. And then this rendering already has the house raised up to FPG, and then the garage and the secondary detached garage is at BFE. So you can see the elevation difference. This one is the attached garage, and then this one is the detached garage. Now this is an existing structure, but we would need to tear it down and rebuild it in the same footprint that it's in right now. But we would raise the foundation 8 inches to meet BFE, because right now the structure is 8 inches below BFE.
Okay, so you're elevating it a little.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
And this exterior wood frame garage that's shown here, tell me with it? Or is that on
That's
the property?
That is the detached garage in question that we would, that smaller structure?
Yeah.
That's not our property, that's the.
That's
neighbor's
another
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the site plan for reference.
Question, you're talking about the per cubic yard soil or really bringing in. Does it have to be off of your property, or does it have to be off of? It has to be off the same parcel. The requirement can't be offset. this other parcel?
If they have a parcel, so it's supposed to come off the same parcel, there's a half acre, there's all kinds of language, I believe, I sent you guys, that it's supposed to come off the same parcel. If there's two parcels together, no, I think I sent you guys the exact language to it, yes, it's supposed to come off the same parcel. But there's all these technical bulletins that ordinances are written by. Each county can adopt whichever way they want, so that FEMA's minimum standards are at base flood elevation. So counties can make that more stringent or keep it at the base flood elevation. So Carroll County says 2 feet above for accessory and for dwellings. We've kind of went through several designs for the detached current garage over the years, so I sent this off to, and we worked hand in hand with Doug Wacker on every aspect of this from 2019 to today. So I sent this off to him too to get the DNR's thoughts and sent you guys that as well, so.
Yeah, I read
Yeah,
that.
so it's one of those to where, FEMA's got criteria that county can change it however they wish, so it's, us being in the NFIP, National Flood Insurance Protection, when we don't have a lot of variances for flood, this is actually, I don't know, have you ever done one?
Have not.
Yeah,
You know,
so
yeah.
that's FEMA and the state, when these come through, has opportunity afterwards to do their investigation and of course, adjust flood rates and whatever they choose, since we vary from our own. So it's a lot of language that they have that you can and can't do, and,
Yeah, I was reading that, the correspondence from Doug Wagner, and it talked about 400 square feet being the threshold for which the rules catch up or
Correct.
engage. And so anything less than 400 square feet is exempt from the rules?
it's exempt from some rules. So if it's less than 400 square, if the garage was a 1 bay, 400 square foot, it can stay at the base flood elevation. It still has to have vents.
Mhm.
It still requires the vents for the 400 square foot, footprint, so it would have to have at least 2 vents. But
Okay.
it cannot be below the base flood elevation. It has to at least, at that point, meet the base flood elevation.
Okay. Now, the question I've got is this house is located over on Lake Freeman?
Correct.
And
Calvin's
it
Drive.
floods?
I don't think the flooding or the damage was, I think it was more storm damage. It was storm damage, wasn't it, from the,
A tree fell on our house.
yeah, so it got wet from the storm.
Oh, got wet from the storm.
Correct.
So they're determining that the base flood elevation is significantly higher than lake grade. Or lake elevation, correct?
I'm not sure what you're asking. There's a
Well,
set base flood elevation that FEMA depicts for every property.
Yeah, but the water in the lake is a certain elevation.
Correct.
Okay, so the base flood elevation
Basically, that used to be called the 100-year flood.
is 2-3 feet above lake level? No.
That, I don't know. I just know we
Well,
have a
I-
2-foot, threshold, and whatever FEMA and the state depict as the base flood, their engineering. Our ordinance states that if there's new construction, it has to be above 2 feet above.
Okay.
So how they do their engineering and their analysis and all that is through FEMA. I'm not sure how they do all that, so.
Well, I got
Every
that.
property on the lake has a base flood elevation, and every property on the river.
I'm on the lake and I'm not inside the flood hazard area, so.
you know, it's-
Yeah,
So
but
there's
I'm not-
properties you can see almost all of Monticello that they have depicted in the flood zone. So at that point, they have to have a surveyor come get the elevations to prove that they're not in the flood zone, so we had to use a certain layer every year,
Well, I was just-
January, that shows.
I was just trying to determine how far above lake level is the potential flood.
Whatever the FEMA depicts it as, so this one is,
I think it might be on that site plan from that, Rose, I'm not sure.
so what you see in blue is what FEMA depicts as the flood.
Flood zone, okay.
This is a layer that we have to check every year. It's called the best available through the DNR, and we have to implement it into our beacon and GIS maps in case there's any changes. It's got a lot of, again, we get a lot of them that we have to tell them, I can't overrule what's on the screen. This is what the state sends to us. So at that point, they get a surveyor to prove they are or aren't, and then we can move forward. But some of them are on a hill, Upper Hampton Drive, where one that was, you could see pretty much all of Monticello. They had it depicted in the plan. So we just go by whatever
Okay,
they have mapped out.
I was just trying to determine. Okay, any other questions?
Cameron, is there a history on why Carroll County decided on 2 feet of road?
I think it was, the events of 2008, and then it happened again in 2016, which is when they adopted the flood ordinance. I wasn't here, so I don't know how they got the 2 feet above. When I went to a couple of trainings in Maryland and elsewhere, some counties are higher than that.
If I remember right, the 2 times that we've changed our flood ordinance, it's been sent to us by the state
Really?
as to what it needs to say, and, we basically just adopt it. So,
Okay.
it has been a while, but 2016, that sounds about right.
Basically, we've got our guideline force
Yeah,
from the state and the
Yeah.
federal.
Everything I do there is, it's through the state and FEMA, it's their rules and,
yeah.
so that's what we, go off of, and they have 1,000 manuals and language that make your head spin, and a website that you can find anything and everything if you've got time. But FEMA's the ultimate authority over flood zones, because we're, again, the NFIP, that's how flood rates are depicted. When there's several events in a year, and you need disaster assistance, if you're following the rules and doing what they're asking, then you're in good shape. Oh, pull this, it's to the right, right?
Can't see anybody in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of new for me, because I've been on there probably 10, 12 years, and we've never addressed anything with the flood ordinance.
I asked a couple of the other directors, and there's not a lot of flood zone variances. Just not a common thing people do try them, but they're not like a property line setback variance, which we get, obviously several a year, so.
Cameron, if I may,
Sure.
I didn't get a chance to read what Doug had sent you in that letter. Was there one particular aspect about the request that was more, I don't know how to put it, against the DNR's recommendation of the other, specifically as opposed to attached versus detached garage?
It's, basically, it outlines the standards, and then
I don't think they said one way or the other, they were
no, it just basically,
yeah.
it outlined the standards of the ordinance, and then if it meets the hardships
And then-
designated by the state and FEMA, and then gives the code to reference, well, what's a depicted hardship, what's a true hardship. And I gave you guys some copies of what FEMA depicts as
You know, and
as a hardship.
economic hardship is not an issue, even if it requires using, according to what Doug had cited in his letter, even if it requires using property for something else other than its original intent, the state deems that okay, so the state is pretty hard lined on what a hardship is. And the other thing that I took from it is that the 400 square foot, anything less than 400 square foot is kind of outside of the rules, and can be built in the flood hazard area.
So, any variance that gets approved by any county that has a flood zone ordinance, FEMA and the state request, language on the meeting, you know, what you guys would come up with for granting it, and then they, perform their investigation to their thoughts on it, and then at that point, they have an opportunity to, suspend the county from the NFIP, meaning they don't have to offer flood insurance to anybody, or they can increase the rate, so that's something that every county that falls, that's under that umbrella of the NFIP is
They set the rates for every county, every area.
there's tiers. So if you're right on Tecumseh Bend, right on the river, you're obviously, you know, if your house is not raised, hasn't had an event, but, you know, there's gonna be a higher tier there than there is by a creek that has minimal. So they changed it a couple years ago where it doesn't really, you don't have to be in the flood zone anymore to be, charged flood insurance. It's your lending institution. If your bank's protecting their investment, and they say, hey, this guy's close enough to a flood zone that we're gonna make him pay this lower tier of $400 a year, they now can do that without question. So that's just, FEMA can come through and the state can come do an audit and suspend a county, they can change the rates, they can do, that's why when variances, there's very few of them, because, you know, the ordinance is set and they will wanna know justification for whatever was approved.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a threshold after so many claims have been filed against the property?
Yes.
It's mandatory to be raised or demolished?
So if there's so many events that happen within a 10-year period, they're not justified, they don't have to pay out anymore. At that point, they can do it, there's a title to it, and at that point, they can say, we're not giving you any more money, now that the property has been deemed, on so many events, and you either raise it, or it's basically, we're gonna demolish it, it's gonna be an empty lot. So, I think it's 13, 16.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up so it was clarified in general.
And then you have a threshold too, so if you have a house that hasn't been, raised and you wanna do some work on it, so if the house is worth $20,000, not the parcel, just the house, there's a 50% threshold. If you're gonna make an investment to remodel this house, and it is $10,001, which is over, you know, 50%, that now brings it into that threshold of it has to be brought into complete compliance.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
lot of rules.
Lot of convoluted rules that have to be followed.
Yeah, books and books of them.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody else? Thank you very much. Thank you. Next thing we would ask is, has this been properly advertised, signposted, fees paid, et cetera?
It has, all requirements have been met for this variance.
Staff report?
The variance was properly advertised in the Carroll County Comment on July 12th. The sign was properly posted on site. We did not receive any requires or public comments prior to the preparation of the staff report. Mr. Wagner requested to demolish the home on the parcel due to black mold and structural damage caused by water intrusion. He wishes to rebuild his dwelling at flood protection grade and the attached garage at the base flood elevation, which we discussed earlier. The existing accessory structure will remain at base flood elevation. So all requirements have been met to proceed.
Okay. Any questions from the board? I have a question, Cindy, from a legal standpoint, what are the ramifications of this?
Well, I mean, I think what Cameron just said, because they're gonna, the state and FEMA are going to get the information on how we move forward on this. If we grant something if we grant a variance to what our current, requirements are, and they don't like it, I mean, they can raise the rates or do away with,
They can suspend the county
yeah,
completely, the whole entire umbrella.
whether they would or not, I don't know that we know,
That's in our bulletin, I give you guys on the.
just because we've never had this before.
This is the first for various requests since I've been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably close to 10, 12 years. Never had one prior to today.
Just a point of clarification. We're talking on variation or just the unattached garage, are we talking?
Both,
Both were-
unattached garage and attached garage, for just the garages, not the living dwelling space. The dwelling itself will be a flood protection.
Okay,
Technically, they could build the house at flood protection grade and not have any garage. And everything would go through smooth.
it's
They,
within the
in fact, they wouldn't even be here in front of us.
okay, so we're talking both garages.
Just both garages. And there is a 400 square foot threshold. Anything greater than 400 square foot would have to be granted a variance. Anything less than 400 square foot would not.
No, the 400 square foot, it is to be built at flood protection grade, whereas less than 400 square foot still has to meet the specifications of flood vents and flood proofing, utilities at flood protection grade, but it's different than over 400, it has to be at flood protection grade.
And the complicating factor, as I understand it explained to me, is to get the garages up to the floodplain. Fill dirt has to be brought, fill of something, some type of fill has to happen.
Correct.
And there is a state ordinance or whatever that says this fill must come from that building lot?
No,
No,
that's
that's-
compensatory storage, so whatever the footprint of the existing structure now, whatever they are adding to, that they're adding to would have to be taken off somewhere on the same parcel.
Or the two garages? Or the two garages and the house?
Just the additional square footage,
Or the garages?
yes, for anything, for the house and the garages.
Okay.
It's on that parcel that's within the flood zone, so it's compensatory
Cause the
storage.
house is bigger than the one that's
The
on.
new house is bigger than what they will have there, so whatever is added to, whatever square footage, that would have to be taken off on that lot as well.
So you already have a problem with the house, you're gonna have to get fill off of the lot.
May I?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, so the house will be on a crawl, so the amount of fill that we're talking about will be negligible because we're just gonna basically put in a footer and bring up the house, like a pier and beam or crawl space. It's only the only additional square footage that requires additional fill would be the garage, because we have to because a garage has to be on a slab. But the main living space is not gonna be on a slab, it's gonna be on a crawl, so there shouldn't be any additional fill, or if there is, very negligible amount that we brought in. Yeah. In
Just
fact,
the additional garage.
it's just the additional garages, yeah.
The garage technically will not have,
Technically,
you could build them here.
you could. That's a different challenge, but yes, it is
Oh, yeah,
possible.
Yeah.
Or the house is gonna be on a crawl space, you said.
Mhm.
What if it's a 6-foot crawl space? Oh, I've got dirt.
Well, this lower floor elevation requirements, in my understanding, and Cameron, you might know better than I do, but FEMA typically doesn't like to see because I thought about that, taking the dirt from underneath the crawl and basically making it a giant deep crawl and pulling it out. FEMA doesn't like to make a bathtub. And-
Yeah, cause at
I
that
mean,
point, you're making it in the basement.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
so
it.
there's
I
a,
thought definition of basement has to have a floor. Crawl spaces don't have floors, they have gravel.
Correct. Yeah, so, yeah, when you're in flood zone, there's a difference between a basement and a, yeah, so he's right, there's a bulletin that states a certain depth that you can go before your basement making a bathtub.
there are several houses on the river that the first floor of the house is 8 feet above ground level.
Mm-hmm.
And they're set up on cement block walls.
Yeah.
You know, with flood doors on it that let the water in and out. So, you know, FEMA doesn't care, you know, base elevation, flood levels and stuff, you know, that they have no regard for that.
But if the house had floodgates,
Which it will.
Which it will.
even if you did the 6 foot,
You have to have floodgates regardless. That's flood, you have to have water, ways for water to go in. Whatever the square footage of the house has to have 1 inch per floodgates. So it has to, if it's a
okay,
270 square foot house, it has to have 27. So they calculate that on how many vents being water in, water out.
yeah.
So, yeah, great, you can have a pool, but, you know, like a cat setting on this one.
Yeah.
Fills up.
So basically, if you put vents in, you got a big old hole, the water's just gonna make it sit there until it gets to a certain point and then it starts swirling. Yeah, so there's requirements for every square foot that's built for floodgates.
So the crawl space you're doing is it built up from grade then?
Will be essentially the grade that it is now, and then we'll put, within a foot, since we're building up at least 2 feet, I think it's 2 feet, 6 inches. Between the current grade and the bottom, and the top plate, there'll be, engineered openings that will allow water to egress and ingress as necessary. So that's already taken into account, and the design also includes, that I'm proposing today, includes the same, structures for the garages, including closed cell spray insulation and treated lumber and everything else you have to do to make it wet proof since,
The flood-proof materials.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
You see, we have limited opportunities, the only thing I can think of is in conjunction with what we just talked about, is your garage. Hey, parking garages have pre-stressed concrete pads they put down all the time. You could put that up on a raised 2 foot, have a pre-stressed concrete pad there, you have a little bit of a ramp going into your garage, and you get your 2 feet above floodplain. It's maybe not as elegant as you would like, or cost effective, but you can, to me, I see you can still achieve it with the use of those pre-stressed slabs like they use in parking garages.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll open the floor for public comment. You know, would anyone like to speak in favor of this variance? Yeah, please
No,
come up, state.
I'm just teasing.
No.
I'm the property owner, so I don't know enough
You
about
can,
this.
you can come up and say whatever you like.
My only question is, if you do put that ramp in like you spoke of, which would look a little funny and it would probably work, wouldn't that flood the ground around it? When we rain, and won't that flood our neighbor's yard? And
No, you're letting, you have staff here flood things through. I was talking, you know, you have your garage up and you have maybe a 2-degree ramp up to your garage, so it's gonna extend out 10
Oh.
feet, 15 feet.
tear up the driveway, just,
So I'm just curious,
There,
you might
you
know
know.
the answer, excuse me.
Yeah.
Can we look at one here in Carroll County that he's talking about? I'd like to see that.
I don't know that.
I don't know that there is any. you know.
Yeah,
So nobody's done that before, and we've had other permits, and similar to what we're trying to do.
Not,
There,
there have not been any variances granted for anything in the flood zone since I have been on the board, you know, and that's been probably 10, 12 years, you know. So,
Each property is unique, and some people go through the
Yeah, I don't wanna-
Loma R, or the Loma F process with Phil, and every proposal's different, so.
the only ones that I'm aware of is, on the river. There have been, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cameron, dozens of homes have been raised above flood
A
level.
lot of those have the pillars too.
You know, have either on pillars or 6, 8, 10 foot cement block walls. you know, with a huge crawl space with the flood vents underneath them, and they do not, to my knowledge, I don't know of any of them that have garages, you know.
There is a house on Carroll County in the lake that was built in the past 5 years that has a garage lower than FPG, and I don't know how we got it approved.
And again, we're talking about what's for this parcel, so what the other ones,
But wouldn't there be a precedent
Yeah,
set,
so-
Pam? If somebody else has done
they
it,
might have went through the Loma process of having the revision with Phil, brought in Phil, or,
and that could be, I don't know that.
yeah, they could have got the Loma F where they brought in Phil and documented what they brought in, had that, you know, there's all kinds of circumstances to how someone can do different things to their property. There's several Lomas,
So I got a question on floodgates in the dam. What are the purpose of them? I'm a little illiterate on that.
the floodgates or the flood vents.
Or you're taking flood vents on a structure, or
If the lake floods to a level that we're talking about here, doesn't the dam have provisions to let the water go over the dam?
Yep.
well, that's the reason I was asking
Yeah.
Cameron about that.
And I have asked FEMA several times, is there any way you guys can come up here and re-engineer, do your, you know, your scope of all the elevations and all that again, especially since they added that spillway. And the answer was if you'd like to pay for it. So,
How long have we owned the property?
22 years.
We've never had flooding.
yeah,
Property.
and I don't know many of them
We were
that
young when
do.
we bought it.
I understand. Yeah, I grew up out there and I've never seen one since I've been on this earth, but FEMA says, you know, thank you for your input, but, you know, so I have tried to, they said, they shot a cost one time, what it would cost to do the entire Carroll County Lake Freeman, and they said, would you be willing to at least pay half? And if I was to put that number out to the council, I'd probably be shunned. So, yeah, but I have made efforts for them to at least come and look at what we deal with at the local level, because there's a spillway, there's a dam, there's, you know, they explained it to me as, it's not necessary. We do the data on flood zone, but if the lake was to completely freeze, and if that water was to melt in a certain time frame, basically the tsunami effect of that water, where's it gonna go? That's how it was explained to me by the
But
FEMA people.
since 1929, when they built the dam, we've never had flood ever.
Yeah, and that's what I
That's
told them.
documented fact.
That's what I asked them
And
to look
Schaefer
into.
has not done it either, so.
I understand that part of it, truly I do, because that's what we deal with every day in the office is, why in the world is this depicted in the flood zone? And FEMA says, don't worry about it, just do what you're supposed to.
If I may, and this is a personal, for me, I'm 8/10 of an inch short, grandfathered in going back, I'm paying flood insurance.
I don't mind paying flood insurance, we do it.
There's the guidelines, cause I've talked to FEMA, I've talked to DNR.
If you was to sell it,
If I'd
See,
sell
that's
it,
what I'm
and
thinking.
there's a mortgage, those people would inherit flood insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So we almost have a property we can't improve in a way, or we can improve the house, but nothing else, sounds like. And then people,
he gave them, there's
yeah,
options out there.
exactly,
It's just,
400 foot, but yeah.
you gotta
But we
go
have
with
like
the
that.
options and the guidelines of what the government is telling us to now,
Yeah.
because it's federal.
Yeah, the thing you have to remember is there are rules. And you should look at how the rules are written and play the game to win. So you have to use the rules to your advantage. So consequently, you know, we're gonna, you know, are there any other, what I should say, are there any other people who'd like to comment on this?
Well, I got one question too, and
Sure.
our neighbors would like to comment on it too. So what we're saying is a house pretty well falls in a safe environment, that we can build a house according to the statutes, all right?
Sorry.
Correct.
We're gonna elevate it.
And then the only concern you've got, we have an existing structure we call the other detached garage. That's there already. So we do nothing to the garage, we can just keep it there. Just leave it like it is, not even touch it.
Yeah, right now, it was built before the 2016 flooding.
Oh, yeah, it's probably,
So in theory, if we do that, consent to do that, then the only structure that we concern is the attached garage to the house.
Correct. If you make it 400 square feet. we don't have to ask for.
So we're making
Yeah,
four-
If it's less than 400 square feet,
That's
you
one
still have to
garage.
put the vents in and you can,
Well,
That's a
it's-
pretty
it's a
small
six-
two-car garage.
you can put it
It's
at
a
the
20
base
by
flood
20 garage,
elevation.
So
at
it's
that-
16, it's a 16-foot door with 2 feet on each side, it's 20 feet deep, it works, but it's tight.
Yeah,
It's tight.
so you put the,
So
you
if we
can
could
leave
send
it
it
at the
to
base
that,
flood elevation,
then everything
then
would be
it.
fine with the board here?
What?
Well, let's put it this way. The 400 square foot is the limit on the rules, and, if you play within the rules,
Well,
say,
if we
say
say 400 square feet,
499
400 square feet, that is.
399 square feet, you're less than 400 square feet,
Oh, it's less than 400 square feet.
I don't remember whether it says 400
It's
square
400
feet
square feet is
or
the
less.
threshold.
or
It
less,
says-
or whether
Yeah,
it's,
so you can keep the floor, you can put the concrete at that level at the base flood elevation, which is 2 feet.
And it's 20 by 20.
Correct.
And that's like a car.
You still have to vent it,
One car.
but then utilities will be at flood protection grade, but at that point, you don't have to take it up to 2 feet.
Or you put in two one-car garages.
Do I now?
Put in
Two
two
one-car garages.
one-car garages.
Right next to each other?
Yeah. Just
If
you
it's
have to have
attached,
them
if
each
it's
follow.
all under one, if it's attached to the house,
No,
it's all one, so unless there's,
no, it's gonna be attached to the other garage.
you mean the accessory
The
garage?
second, right now they have two-car garages.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now you build a one-car garage, attach it to the house, it's under 400 feet. You build a second one beside it, attach it to the garage, not to the house.
Then,
That's still what needs to
but
be
you're still,
considered.
you're still,
you're still presenting over 400 square feet.
correct.
Yeah.
No, this, both are under
Well,
400.
you could put it
You
next
have,
to
you
that
have
one
outside
garage at
walls.
400 square
It's a
feet.
four-sided building.
But
You
you
may,
can't,
I don't know that they
if
have
you
roof.
didn't attach it, you'd probably be okay.
Right,
Yeah, you can't,
The second one, you could.
if you attach it, it's all
Second can't be
one, if
attached.
you don't,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
And that's
there's
just-
a tight
maybe-
corner
maybe
right
a-
there, so that'd be a tight squeeze.
there's ways, I guess.
Yeah, that's.
Can we just,
We don't, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So can I ask a question? I've always got a question.
Yes.
So the existing garage, which is 30 by 40, if we don't do anything with the existing garage, except like put on a new roof,
That's where,
Is
and
that
we've
allowed?
discussed that, is the
50%
only thing
rule.
that changes that whole thing is the 50% threshold.
But isn't a rule, I think what I read in that camera too, and we talked about this in the past too. A roof is called a maintenance item, not a change of environment.
Correct, so if FEMA,
That's a
if the
completely
state
different thing.
declared that as a maintenance and didn't fall under that, you're good.
I have
When you
tarps
start
on-
adding.
I have tarps on the roof right now, to keep from.
Dude.
Yeah,
Right now
so
it
that
is
would be okay,
bad.
so if you started adding interior bathrooms and all that,
It already
that's,
has a bathroom in
yeah,
it,
that's separate, so.
so we keep it in there, we keep it like it is.
Yeah, you don't have to take anything out.
I can tell you from, insurance standpoint, if you repair half the roof, or, and from tax standpoint, if you repair half the roof, that's not a new roof. That's a maintenance item, that's expensible in 1 year on rental properties. But if you replace the whole roof, that's a depreciable item that has to be depreciated over 27 and a half years.
So do one roof, 1 year, another roof.
Do half of it.
If you're gonna put a roof on as a maintenance, if you got a house that's leaking and you're putting it on to stop it, that's a maintenance. If you're now putting new windows and
but-
siding and
Cam, have you seen the place? It needs new windows and siding. I know, I mean, it's
But no, remember,
yeah.
50%.
new roof now,
Pardon me?
new roof now, now.
Okay, another thing too is it has mold in the garage, the freestanding garage,
The one that's
so that's a health hazard. What does,
it can be remediated.
what do we recommend for that?
You can remediate, there be no remediation.
No, I know we can, but is that called maintenance?
That would be,
Yeah, I mean, if you go in and have Service Pro or whoever remediate the mold, that's not gonna count towards it.
There's molds in the ceiling right now, cause it's had water.
Yeah, you're not gonna have to change
We're waiting
the
to see what
structure.
we can do with it.
So,
yeah.
People think we're neglectful, but we know we can't change anything until we get an okay to change things.
So do you have a list, Cameron, of maintenance items that we call it, and that's a good idea to have,
Yeah.
but,
yes.
okay,
Yes.
so if you could send that to me,
The state, yeah, so the state has,
yeah,
there's criteria for it.
cause I can't get it, it's an old garage.
We just had one on the river that did it and they end up
But
getting.
you can't get a truck in it, it's so low.
It was built in the 60s. You know, they had smaller vehicles.
We'll talk with Cameron separately. and get that list together.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak, either in favor or against? Anybody?